Hello to all our LinkedIn followers, and welcome to today's session on reducing the risk of fraud in the contact center. I'm David Wasserman from NICE's portfolio marketing team, and today I'll be talking with Pearl Lieberman, one of our top fraud prevention experts. So welcome, Pearl.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me.
Sure, glad to have you. Pearl, we all hear the word fraud and it brings up so many different and scary things in people's minds. From something like getting your wallet stolen out of your pocket on a crowded street, to things as extreme as maybe having your identity stolen and someone opening a credit card in your name. So when we think about the contact center, can you talk to us today about some of the fraud trends you've seen in this environment?
Yes, David, I think what you're mentioning is very, very interesting, because when we talk about fraud and when we think about it, we need to kind of change our mindset. We live in a world that is fully digitalized. So fraud really is no longer about having your credit card stolen as much as it is about having your personally identifiable information stolen. So all this data that makes you you. That would be your date of birth, that is freely available on Facebook. And that would also be, some other form of information, such as your social security numbers, that can also be, available on the dark web. We know that in 2019, there were close to 165 million sensitive data exposed. That essentially means that our data is at risk. For fraudsters, this is an opportunity, to be able to gather the data and create and gather more information about each person. This is what enables them afterwards to create more sophisticated attacks that go beyond just a credit card theft, And just to give our audience a kind of an example or a sense of what it is, on the dark web, your social security number or your ID number is worth much, much more than your credit card number. Because what the fraudsters do is that they perpetrate sophisticated attacks that we call account takeovers. The duration of the attack is much longer than a simple credit card theft. Today, you know when your credit card has been stolen, and very quickly you can remedy to that. But if a fraudster impersonates you in the contact center and is able to reroute your address, change it to his, change the email address of the account, reset the passwords, you're in a situation where you have lost control over your accounts. And this is actually much more dangerous than a simple credit card theft. Now, why the contact center is a space that is more vulnerable in this digitalized economy? Well, simply for the reasons that the contact center is the space in the customer service journey where you meet humans, and that's the human factor. Because of empathy, because of how easy it is, sadly, to manipulate another human being. And this is what we call social engineering. This is what fraudsters excel at. This is their strategy to either gather more information on an account. Maybe the attack will not be in the contact center, but the fraudsters will use it to understand what are the the last four digits of your credit cards or your date of birth, because they're able to change the conversation with the agent to make it a little more colloquial and to have their empathy. And I think, given the situation that we're in, given the circumstances with the COVID-19, one of the main examples of this is how we can hear fraudsters in our recordings leveraging the crisis, leveraging the COVID-19 in order to turn the conversation with the agent to something that is more familiar and to use that as a way to bypass some of the security measures.
I see. I want to dig a little more into this. Clearly, from what you've said, the contact center is a significantly vulnerable entry point for fraudsters to harm organizations and their customers. When I think about what we've, I guess, as a world all been through in the last 90 days or so, and the situation with most agents really working from home, how has that changed the fraud trends that you're seeing out in the industry?
Well, to give you also a sense in terms of numbers, we've seen that pretty much published in every global news outlet or every government agencies. Fraud has quadrupled since the beginning of the crisis. For fraudsters, this is a real opportunity, and for customers, this is costing billions. So now when you think about the agents and you go back to their situation, you need to understand that agents, they're trained to give perfect customer service. They're not here in order to identify fraudsters. Neither that should be their job, really. So the whole COVID-19 situation with the agents at home is really creating a perfect storm. And let me explain what I mean by that. You have the agents that are at home, and they're probably, they have some form of disruption. Maybe they have family members, maybe they have kids around. So they will be more likely to bypass some security measures, not to follow the protocols. They also want to be going a little faster because we know the call volumes, it has completely spiked. So they're under a lot of pressure to move on to the next caller. Again, here is an opportunity to bypass some of the security measures. And the last point that I mentioned earlier on, it's the human factor, it's empathy. I think from the examples that we have, the most prominent one, and I think that will speak to all of our audience and to you, David, is imagine that you have a mother with a crying baby in the background, and very often operators will be using, recordings of dogs barking or baby crying. And if she's telling you that she doesn't really remember her password and the phone number that's on her husband's account, you would be here to help her. You would eagerly and willingly give her what she needs and bypass all the security measures. So this is another example of social engineering. This is another example of how the situation has made it even more complicated to identify fraudsters and to stop frauds. Now we know
I see.
that. Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Most of our customers that are using the solutions, they have already deployed it for their agents working from home. So that's really about empowering them to understand who is on the other side of the call.
I see. Well, Pearl, if I wasn't concerned before, I'm super scared now. But as you know, organizations, as you had said, are really supposed to be focused on providing great customer service and customer experiences. But obviously, they still need to protect against fraud. If I think about my own experiences with the suppliers I do business with, I do business with a small bank in the States, and it's pretty consistent when I call them. They're asking me a series of 5 or 6 questions, regardless of what I call them about. It could be even the opening hours of the bank. They're asking me these 5 or 6 questions. It's super, super frustrating for customers. So how can organizations, from your perspective, balance this issue of protecting against fraud and still provide a great customer experience?
I agree with you, David. You use the right word. It's about balance. It's like an interesting dance that contact center or customer service centers need to be able to dance in order to balance between security and impeccable customer service. The processes that you've described, where you're asked a lot of questions, in the industry, we refer this to knowledge-based authentication. Essentially, the customer or the caller will be asked to be authenticated based on what they know. So that will be your mother's maiden name, that's going to be your first pet, or the first school that you've attended, most generally. All of these informations, by the way, if you remember the beginning of this conversation, is information that can be, hacked from Facebook or that can be easily found on the web. So this is also not optimal. But the idea also is that it really relies on the memory of the person who's calling. It is legitimate that you would, for a split second, forget the name of the first pet. So if we look at industry trends and industry analysts, for authentication, there are a variety of methods. So we've seen the method that we call what you know, that is something that only you can know. There is something that you have that would be a one-time password that would be sent to your phone, or that might be a token that you would be using. And the third one is something that you are, and that would be biometrics. That can be your retina, that can be your fingerprints, and that can be your voice. It's pretty obvious that amongst all those methods, something that you are, the biometrics option, is the most secure. It's not only that it's the most secure, is that within this category, voice is the most secure, voice biometrics. Now, why am I saying that? Because it's not just the way you sound. For voice biometrics to excel and to operate at the level at which we operate, we also take into account the shape of your mouth, the space between your teeth, the length of your tongue, and so many details that make it even more precise than just the fingerprints. So amongst the whole ecosystem of authentication, voice biometrics clearly stands out. And now, how do we stop fraudsters with that? I think that's the main question. What we do is that we create voice prints for fraudsters. We're experts, we're leaders in the contact center, we're already there. We're able to leverage historical calls in order to create a voice print for known fraudsters, building a watch list and stopping them in real time, blocking them if they try to attack again by letting the agents know that there is a fraudster. We're also able to leverage artificial intelligence, behavioral analytics, because we know, most fraudsters, they are using the same strategy, the same modus operandi. They will be using the same phrases. That would be resetting a password, changing an address, and the behavior, to be fair, and this is the most straightforward example, when you call your bank, you only just want to access your account. If the same voice is trying to access different accounts, then you may have a high-risk interactions. And this is how we use voice biometrics in order to stop fraudsters in real time and to empower the agents with the right information that they need to carry on and give the best service that they can.
I'm sure for our audience painted a very alarming picture of the different types of fraud that contact centers face, but also with biometrics, a really great way to solve for that while continuing to provide great customer experiences. You know, Pearl, one of the things we try to do on our sessions is we try to really bring this down to earth for our audience by providing, you know, a real life example. And maybe for today, could you just give the audience a taste of voice biometrics and what that means in a real contact center environment?
I wish I could share with you the recordings, but obviously these are this is content that is protected. What I can give you, especially one of the latest fraudsters that we've analyzed, we like to call him Mr. Social Security Number. Essentially, he goes by his modus operandi will be to change an address. What he will do is that he will start a conversation with an icebreaker around the COVID-19 situation and say, oh my God, I'm watching the news. This is crazy. And then the agents will respond with empathy. Oh, I know, you know, we're all working from home. We don't really know what's going to happen. And once he moved the conversation to something that is almost more personal, he will just, you know, bypass the security measures. So the agent will ask him, okay, can you give me, you know, the 4 digits of your credit card or your date of birth? That's an information he doesn't have. And he will say, oh, you know what? I'm at work or my wife is not here. Let me give you my social. And then we know probably the social security number he got from the dark web. And then all these phrases that we know he's using, changing the address, changing the email, changing the password, he's essentially carrying out an account takeover. And so we're able to identify the behavior, we're able to identify the specific purpose of the call, and we're able to identify the voice, obviously.
Wow. So in this situation, voice biometrics would solve the issues on preventing fraud in these types of circumstances, right?
More than that, we don't only think about it. In the contact center, you've got millions of calls, you know, running through the system every day. So on the one hand, we're able to tell the fraud team, guys, you don't need to listen to 2,000 calls. You're able to listen to only 30. Amongst those 30 calls, we're able to tell them there are 15 fraudsters. Here are the interactions. We're even able to link it back to the actual account owner and be able to verify if the account has been retrieved or has been recovered yet or not. So the severity of the attack.
I see.
Something that we do.
I see. This is amazing. Well, Pearl, I really want to thank you for joining us today. It's certainly clear that voice biometrics is a great way to identify fraudsters, as well as provide a great customer experience and have that balance that you talked to us about today. And if you have interest in any of our LinkedIn followers in talking to us about our voice biometrics product, you can click on the Contact Us link at the top of today's post around our LinkedIn Live session. Pearl, again, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it a lot.
Thanks, David.
Sure. And we want to thank you for joining us, our audience, these past 8 weeks in our series on customer service in times of change. As a heads up, beginning next week, we'll begin a new series called Agile CX, where we'll talk with experts about how you can instill stability and flexibility in your contact center to provide both a great customer experience and employee experiences as we move forward to the future. Have a great rest of the week. We appreciate you joining. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.